Hello there, everyone. For today's in-class exercise that we did, the follow-up video is on court data specific to, this is the Philly DAO's office data dashboard. A great direction for courts to move in. You don't see this across the US. I highly recommend everyone take a look at it in terms of their data snapshots, which could be integrated into infographics, their reports, research, everything with it is pretty cool from a court perspective because you don't see access to these types of data often. And I think that's a weird part within criminal justice research of we have it on the front end with a lot of our police data portals, data transparency, and we see a fair amount, not a whole hell of a lot on the back end with courts and community corrections. But our middle part, especially at a localized level, is oftentimes absent in data portals, data analysis when we have access to it. Even though we're in a big data transparency and accessibility movement, court data is hard to come by. So I think what Philly's doing with their DAO and their public dashboard is really cool to see what could come from other cities if they follow in similar footsteps. You have to be able to assess what you're doing to know what works and what doesn't work. Easy way to do that is to be transparent, as you can see here, but few places do that. Alright, so coming back to the video today, in class we talked about and went over in the exercise data tools within Excel. Primarily we're going to use flash fill, consolidate, remove duplications, some of the basic ones within data tools that can be helpful. We're going to go over some other items within Excel, but primarily we're going to stick with our data tools. Again, the exercise was focused on using data tools, but we were going to use some court data since Philly made it easy for us to go through it to show you what you could look at, that kind of thing. These snapshot reports give you a much better idea of what could be done. This purpose of the video that I'm doing today, the recording, is more so on the side of getting you familiar with the tools within Excel versus specifically analyzing a research question, a hypothesis on court-related data, and a story you want to tell with it. With that, if we come over to downloads, you can see that they have the data directly downloadable through here, or you can go to their GitHub page. If you're not familiar with CSV, that's our comma-separated files. We'll go over what that looks like because the good part is from a teaching perspective, if I click on the file I want, so charges by census tract and week, it actually opens it into another web page for us. But the cool part is it shows you the format of what CSV data really are. So at the top you can see our variable labels. These would be our column headers or labels in Excel. When we have a specific text field, you'll see quotations around them, so it reads it as text. You can even see it down here with our FIPS code, so it's state, county, tract, FIPS, and we'll go over that here in a bit. But you can also see a bunch of numbers where it's 0, 1s, 2s, 3s. It's truly charges by census tract, by week from 2013 into more recent weeks. But all of these are associated with, so this 0 would be associated with homicide and then non-fatal shootings, all the way over to uncategorized offenses. So this is what you're downloading. Excel is going to read this file as a comma-separated one and put it into the data set, the grid that you're used to seeing. The cool part is, within Google Chrome, if you just right-click and hit Save As, it'll recognize it as a CSV file for you. You could run into an issue if you're using another web browser that it wants to read it in as a text. Go through that process. I typically use Google Chrome or DuckDuckGo. So depending on what you download it through, what web browser you're using, Firefox I believe presents it as text, and also I think Edge, but not a huge issue, just reads it in separately. Download, I'm going to automatically open it, let it generate here for a second. Alright, as you can see, we have that data right in front of us that we saw on the prior web page. A bunch of 0s, 1s, some other numbers that are scattered in here, but our column labels at the top are variable labels themselves. And then again, if you remember, if you see a bunch of pound signs or the E to plus 10, or it could be a larger number than that, it just means that these cells or these columns need more room to show their full value. So if you highlight the entire sheet, double click between A and B, it's going to auto fit the contents based on the largest cell itself. So you can see for ag assault, it's longer because of the name, not the values itself. But alright, let's get started. So at the top here you can see we have a lot of tabs. The one we're going to focus on today is primarily, oops, I hit spacebar, the data one over here. I'm not going to get into how to grab data, transform it, or query in connections. To me, that's more advanced parts of Excel. Even data types, this is pretty cool, and I'll do follow-up videos. Sorry, I scrolled on that. I'll do follow-up videos related to this because it brings in some outside information that's connected through Bean. That's pretty handy if you're not familiar with a lot of different data types. But again, we're going to primarily be using text to columns, flash fill, remove duplications, and consolidate. Now we can get into data validation. I'll do that in more advanced videos. And I do have the tab already for data analysis tools. Imagine this is a statistics add-in that Excel has. You just have to check the box. And we'll get into some of these other ones in later videos. I'm primarily sticking with these main data tools. The validation for what we're doing today is not as important, but I'll get into that for other videos. All right, let's get going. Follow along with what I did in class for the in-class exercise. I want to insert 3 columns to the right of the date. Essentially, I'm going to want to tease out and pull out the day of the week, the month of the year, and the year itself. So I'm going to insert 3 columns. I'm just right-clicking and hitting insert. I want to double check before I do anything. You can see if I click on some of the cells, they're recognized as dates. I want all of these to be general, or it's going to give me an issue when I go to extract part of that date or autofill. For the date itself, I want to go ahead, I want to see the day of the week. Keep in mind we are using the weekly data through the Philly DAO, so every day is going to be Sunday. I just want to show you with the flash fill that it will change based on the column itself. So we'll do day, month, and year. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and just type Sunday because it is the same day 3 times. Similar, I'm going to do December because each one of these census tracks falls within this week for December, and then year, I know it's 2013. And at this point, we have gone over different ways to extract the day of the week, the month of the year, and the year itself from a date. I'm going to show you the flash fill option. So again, I typed in 3 corresponding to our column A, here our date value. If I come back to our date tab, data tab, and I click flash fill, so I'm in the 4th cell, I'm going to click flash fill. Excel is going to look for the theme where I'm pulling this and try to replicate it downwards. You can see everything is Sunday as it should be. Now I'm going to do both of these, the month and the year, before scrolling down to see if everything worked out as it should have. So give it a second, you can see the progress being made. So we have now our month. And now for the last one, I'm going to, oops, that's why. It even gave me the warning of I was missing that full year part. There we go. Cool. Now let me just keep scrolling down. I'm going to pull it on the side. You can see as I continue to scroll, it's now March, still Sunday, but it pulled out March and it even pulled out 2014. So we're good to go then. We can go down all the way. We can see into 2021. We're still good with that. Excel flash filled the contents of these columns based on our date values, looking to see the pattern in the data and flash filling accordingly because of that. Pretty handy. Again, this is just another way to extract from a date into other columns if you want to use that. Now to practice again and again, since we've done it multiple times, but it's always handy to go through if you want to sort or filter. I typically use filters, so I want to select out just our 2020 data. So again, I want to go to our filter. It puts a drop down option for each of them. It's going to list out all of our values from it. I'm going to unselect and then just select 2020, hit OK. I'm going to hit Control C, so that's just copying the values here. So it's going to skip over any other year that I have unfiltered right now. Open a new sheet, Control V to paste it. Give it a second to fully paste all the information. And we're good to go. I'm going to rename this new sheet down at the bottom, if it lets me. I don't know why it's not at the moment. Oh, there, just hiccup. There we go. So 2020, again, I'm just going to let the autofit of the cells come up. But the cool part is, and to show you kind of some of the headaches within the geospatial realm of when you have a lovely FIPS code. So the first two, the 42 represents Pennsylvania as a state. So that's its number. It's unique to that specific state. So it's the state code is 42. For Arkansas, it's 05. So you actually have to keep that leading 0 or it becomes a hassle when you try to merge in other data. The next three, the 101 is actually the county ID, so that's going to be our Philadelphia County. So you have your state and then county, and then the following 6 are the neighborhood-specific tract number. And we would add on another one for our block group, but for now we're just sticking to tract. I'm going to insert 2 columns to the right of this because I want to tease apart it for state, county, and tract. I'm only going to put 2 because I'll show you what it ends up doing within our text to column option. You're able to paste essentially some of this back into the same column. So our state will go here, then county, then tract. All right. So from here, I'm going to highlight our column E, our tract GeoID 10, and I'm going to click text to column. So I want to separate this text string into multiple columns. Given what it's showing, I know that it's fixed with, and I want to select where it has breakpoints in it. Keep in mind, if we wanted to have a delimited break, such as a comma, a backslash, a colon, we can specify that. But for now, we have a fixed width 1, so I'm going to select that, click next. And here, I want it to split after the 42, so I want the state. So I'm truly just clicking it, adds a line. And then I want another one after the 101. So we now have 3 separate columns that Excel is going to generate for us. So we'll have state, county, and tract. Hit next. And this is the key part that we want to pay attention to. Again, it's going to read them all here as general. This is where you want to keep it as text. So the first one, we switch as text, and you might think you're done. Keep in mind you have 3 different columns itself, so we need to move over, text again. And this is the probably most important one because it has leading zeros. If I left it as general, this 000100 would end up just being 100. So it gets rid of those leading 3 zeros. Depending on what you do, you might want that. But for us and what we're trying to do here, we want to keep it as a text and we want it to be recognized as 6-string character. So we're good there. They're all text. You can choose if you wanted to move it to another sheet or anything like that, but I want my first column to start in E1, which puts us right here where the original one was. So hit finish, and it's going to do that across each row for us, and then I'm going to relabel state, county, tract. And now we have our individual ones, and I did this in class so we could go over the other way to do this. So we now have this text to columns, we have it separated, but what if we want these back together? And I say I went over it this way in class because I want to go through a concatenation again. That's to combine these 3 fields into one column. So if I go to insert, and here I just want to put my GeoID. That's another label for it. That'll be handy here in a little bit when we actually map some of this data. Again, this should be familiar if you've done another video or in the class itself, but I truly want to concatenate these fields. For this one, I don't need any spaces, I don't need any commas. I want the 42 to butt up against the 101, and then also the 000100. So with that, I just select the cells that I want. I don't want to put a comma in terms of quotation and comma or space between them. I'm just putting the comma in there to separate them for the formula. If I hit enter, you might notice that it didn't work properly. Again, if I come back to our home page, it's reading it as text, so it's following what was to the left of it. Here, I actually need it to be a general one, so it reads it as a formula versus text. So you can truly see it read it and kept it as text. If I change that, and then I come back into the formula, hit enter again, and there we go. It's generated. Similar to using the flash fill, I'm just going to double click this green corner there, and we're good to go. It copied it for us all the way down, and it generated our GeoID, our FIPS for each specific tract or neighborhood. What I usually show students at this point is if I click on any one of these, it still has a formula within it versus just the value. If you're happy with how it turned out and that's what the information that you needed, I always recommend copying the column as a whole and then just pasting it again, but pasting it as value. So when it has the 1, 2, 3, when I do it that way, it actually recognizes it as essentially text. It should be sorted as a number, but it gets rid of the formula for us. So it is unique that way, and we're good with it. That's what we want it to show as. All right, so I'm going to open up that data tab again and kind of go over. We hit on text to columns. We did a flash fill. Now, say you're interested in just wanting to know how many tracks there are in Philadelphia. Keep in mind we have our unique identifier here as a GeoID, but we have these tracks showing up for every week. So it's 52 weeks times X amount of neighborhoods itself. So there's a lot of duplication. To show you what you could do, and I'm going to put this in a new sheet. So I'm just highlighting this, copying. I'm going to go over to show you just how to remove the duplicates itself. So if you're using another file, and some of their files for the DAO have totals, which are handy for this if you just want the totals, you don't want to know the subset of information below it, using the remove duplication is key. For my purposes here, I'm just interested in truly understanding and getting the unique identifiers for each neighborhood itself. So I'm going to show you, we have these same tracks, they'll show up about 52 times within this page itself. That's problematic if we're trying to use it in other types of analysis. What it's going to do and how Excel operates is it's going to recognize the first one as the original and delete everything after it. So this data would stay with it if you were to remove duplicates, but it's not going to consolidate it. It's truly just going to remove those, and we're left with the first week of data we had. So again, if I highlight this and I come over to remove duplicates, it's going to ask you what do you want it to remove based on. So it knows it has headers. So I'm going to unselect everything, but I want to delete and truly remove the duplicates based on the GeoID. So I'm only left with the original ones. If I click OK, it's going to tell you how many were removed. So removed 19,635, and you're left with 385 unique values. So that means that there are 385 unique values. So about that, there might be an unknown column or field in there. That's how many neighborhoods we have, census tracts we have within Philadelphia. So if I click OK, our file just got much smaller. We no longer have over about 20,000. We're down closer to the 300 to 400. And there we have an unknown. Excuse me for a second. I had to sneeze there. But as you can see, we have far fewer. So with this, if I just wanted a list of my census tracts, I'm good to go. I know now what census tracts are within Philadelphia based on that just removed duplication part. So I know the 384 unique identifiers, and we'll come back to this here in a bit, for Philadelphia. Valuable information. The bad part is when you just do remove duplication, it only keeps the original, the first one that's listed in Excel. So depending on how it's sorted or filtered, you might be deleting information or removing information that you want to keep. And that's where it can become problematic when you're using this one. Now let's go over the other way. So I'm going to just put removed, dupe. But now I want to show you how to consolidate. So say since we already pulled out the calendar year of 2020, our weekly charge data for each neighborhood, say we want to consolidate that into our total. That could be pretty handy. We could take that and do a lot of cool stuff with it. Since we have an entire calendar year, we can see where charges are distributed across the neighborhoods within Philadelphia. So I'm going to put consolidate. And again, it's a blank sheet. So if I come up here, we're good to go. And I'm just going to click consolidate in our data tab. Again, we have different functions up here that are a lot of our basic descriptors of central tendency and variability. I want the sum, so I want to add each row up based on the unique ID, which is our GeoID here. So again, I need to tell it what I want it to search for. So I'm going to click the reference, delete that. And I want to go back to our 2020 page. I'm going to scroll to the top. And I want to highlight GeoID, so I don't want anything to the left of it. I want GeoID in our top row here. These are our variable labels. Control-Shift-Down arrow highlights that for us. We're good to go. Make sure, though, you click Add. And the key part is we want to use the labels in the top row. So those are the column names, our variable labels. And our left column gives us our unique identifier that it's going to consolidate based on. So I click OK. And it's going to do this in the background for us. So remember, it had about 20,000 rows that it just consolidated into 300 and should be 85 because the bottom one should be an unknown. Or 86, yep. I'm going to go ahead and delete that one just so it makes it easier in the next step. But as you see here, this is now a count of charges for the entire calendar year of 2020 for Philadelphia based on different offense types. With that, I'm going to give this a label up here so I know this is the GeoID. But this is where you can see moving from a weekly count per neighborhood, which gives you a lot of time information. See how it shifts over the calendar year when you have high points. But overall, it gives us a nice picture now of our calendar year and what that looks like by offense type and by neighborhood. For instance, if we were interested in, let's say, homicide, we could use a basic sort here. We want to sort based on our homicide and see what neighborhood had the most. And we're going to do largest to smallest. And we can see a specific neighborhood, this one here, had 13 homicide charges, and it goes down in descending order. But to me, we don't know where that is. Yes, we could go on the US Census and track it down or find a map on Google to find the corresponding number. But why not just look at it within Excel? And that's where I'm kind of at with a lot of this work is Excel gives you a lot of options. It continues to grow. I'll be the first to say it can't do everything. There's other programs and software that make life easier. But this is a good place to start when you don't have a great and extensive background in a lot of those programs. So with that, I'm going to open up the web page again. So this is where we got our data. What all I did to get to this census page was in Google, I typed in Census Shapefiles. I clicked on the first link, it brought me here. So it gives you a web interface to download a lot of the boundary files. So a census tract, county, state, they all have boundaries. I can map this based on the state itself, the county. If I had the names itself, Excel reads it very easily. Census tracts and smaller spatial units of analysis, it's not as familiar with, it's not built in, but it does give you the option to import those boundary files. That's where we luck out with the census making our life a bit easier with that. So if I go to our web interface here, I simply want to download the census tract. So if I select layer for Philadelphia, I'm going to click submit. It's going to say go down to Pennsylvania. It'll probably make me download for the entire state. Yep. I'm okay with that. Just because I know once I extract it all, it's only going to show the information that I actually have tracked counts for. So it's going to show specifically what I need. So I'm going to open that specific folder where that's located. I don't mind this mess, it makes sense in my head. And depending on what type of computer you have, if you're working on lab, you might have to use 7-zip and you can extract all here. For me, I can just extract all straight out. You can rename it. I'm keeping it the same just for this exercise purpose. You'll see all of these files that download for you. Don't delete any of them. It'll create issues for you. Think about a DBF as essentially our table that we would view in Excel. A lot of our spatial files have an attribute table that we can use in the same fashion and go in and out of Excel. But with that, I'm going to exit out of these, and I'm going to open up Excel again. The cool part is, since we have all this, we just consolidated the entire calendar year based on our charges for different offense types at the neighborhood level, so our census tract. I'm going to go to Insert, if it lets me in a timely manner, of course. Since this is a longer video, it doesn't like my 3D tour map. And that might be because it looks like it's still CSV. I've recorded this one a couple times. My computer didn't like it, so I'm going to double check to make sure I saved it as a workbook, and I have not, so that's why it's grayed out. Again, I didn't follow my own advice and save it as a workbook the first time when I opened it. Click Save, and now it's going to give you a few more options that previously weren't there. There we go. Now we have that option again. So I'm going to highlight this, go to 3D Maps, and I'm going to open our maps. Again, we're going to use the data that you see in front of you and link it to that file that's downloaded through the census. Give it a second. Keep in mind this is opening another page for us. Some days it goes quicker for me than others. I was hoping it would be decent today since I also did a fair amount of updates before recording this one. Alright, it loaded on my other page. Let me pull that over here. Selects the table, so it doesn't like my data for whatever reason. Let me try this again. I hate that it generates that. Highlighting specifically that. Open, new tour. So instead of selecting all, I just selected my data set itself. Hopefully, if you see that same issue, it's something, yep. So I just had to specify the specific range versus just the entire sheet, and everything generated for us, so we're good to go here. The big issue is we have our GeoID as our location, so if I bring this field list over, you can see what everything I brought in, but we don't have anything for Pennsylvania, especially Philadelphia specifically. We just have a number. That's where we need to go into our custom regions. So that's the file we just downloaded. It's a custom region, and we want to import this new set. And you're going to want to direct it to where you downloaded and unzipped that folder for Pennsylvania. Mine is under courses. And here we go. And you want to open the shapefile. Keep in mind that you need to recognize the .shp because we'll use that again here in a second. And if you're familiar with KML, that's oftentimes what people use in Google Earth. Give that a second to read it in. And the good part to remember here is, yes, it gives you a name. You think you're done, but keep in mind you want this pick region name from to be your unique identifier. So for us, that was the GeoID. And in this file, I knew it was already going to be the GeoID, so that's why I had it match that. This is where you have to have some familiarity with the data you're working with. For me, I knew it was GeoID. If you open the codebook for this on the census website, you could find out what each one of these refers to. It's just a knowledge I've had from working with these data sets for a while. You can see throughout the entire state, we just have under 3,500 census tracts. But if I click import, we're now good to go. Now you might wonder, well, I did that, nothing linked. You still have to connect your data set that's in Excel to the shape file, the boundary file you just imported. So if you go to under location, add field, click your GeoID, and then you want to specify what's this connected to within the boundary file, that custom region one. So you want to specify the custom region and make sure you select the one that has KML SHP for yourself. Once you do that, you can see it will auto zoom and take you over to that area. I'm going to click flat map and some map labels to help us out, and I'm just zooming in to Philadelphia. Now you might think, well, this is pretty cool, but those are a bunch of boxes. It doesn't really show us as much. The cool part in Excel is it recognizes the boundaries themselves from the shapefile. So if you go over here under the data part and go to the far right, you can visualize it as the region itself. So these are the boundaries of the census tract in Philadelphia. Pretty cool to see it that way. To me, you can also now change it up because there's no value, there's no category. You have a lot of offenses in here, so you could show it a couple different ways. To me, if you want to do it based on categories, depending on how you had your data coded, if you had it through ranges and everything else, categories is pretty cool to look at. For us, let's say we want to find the homicides where it had the highest neighborhood. You can see we have all of these specific values itself. if you want to change any one of these, it gives you the option within here to change the specific one for yourself. Of, say I wanted to change 13 to be, oh, what's it, standout color that we don't have. Let's just do a neon bright green lighter. You can see now this one right here is our 13. So for us, it's an easy way to see what is our highest count itself. So this neighborhood here, if I continue to zoom in, we can change the almost transparency of it, if you want to think of that sense. And we can further zoom in and see actually the boundaries of where this neighborhood is within relation to Philadelphia as a whole. So we know in calendar year 2020, there were 13 charges for homicide specifically within this neighborhood. To me, that's pretty cool data to know where this information is coming from, what we're showing with it. And again, we can show different categories and everything with that. It's a nice way to visualize your data and for what you're looking at. There's plenty of stuff you can do within it, some more cosmetic parts. If you want to get rid of your field list, you can always change the layer part to say if you want it to be our legend. You can also add text boxes if you want some other charts within it. If you want to change the whole thematic scheme of it, if you like dark view or some other crazy color combinations, Excel gives you some options, but not a ton, so keep that in mind. But to me, it's a pretty cool way to visualize where you had homicide charges. So where we see all the darker blues, a lot of neighborhoods within Philadelphia did not have any charges at all. So it is pretty unique to see that visually beyond just the data we saw within our spreadsheet itself. So here I was just looking at the bottom of what type of statistics it would give you down here if you highlighted more than one at a time. But you can see even some of our high ones are next to some that had low. All right. But with that, that's the end of this video. I kind of got sidetracked there with the mapping part. Before I go too deep into that rabbit hole, I want to stop this recording. So keep in mind, for our in-class assignment, we primarily stuck to our data tab and our data tools. We use flash fill, text to columns, remove duplicates, and consolidate. In the future, with other videos, I'll get into some of the data types, the data validation part. If you want to get into outline and the grouping size, it can be handy. If you've taken stats with me, you've used this tab quite a bit with the data analysis tools. These are a lot of our basic statistics after we get out of central tendency and variability. We use this quite a bit in class. Other than that, if there's questions, please reach out to me. Good luck on your homework assignment. Until next time.